Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Hey there, healthcare humans. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to let you know that one of my self-paced courses called Homecoming, which is a course that's about rest and embodiment. It's an introductory way of learning to deeper understand the concepts of embodiment, about how to feel like a human being in a human body through practicing rest. I want to let you know that that course is going to be on sale for 50% off for the entire month of June. There isn't a coupon code. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes below, or go to my website, look under courses, click on Homecoming, and you'll find the summer sale option there waiting for you. I'd love if you spent this summer inviting more rest into your life, because I think all of us in healthcare need to practice more rest. We're deeply socialized not to rest. And if you're looking for a supportive learning container that you can take at your own pace to explore the concept of rest through written as well as audio and visual podcasts and videos to help you understand the concepts of embodiment more, I would love if you would consider enrolling in that course and use it to have a beautiful summer of rest. Now, on with the episode. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for yet another episode of The Other Human in the Room. So today I am carrying on a tradition and actually kind of making it a tradition in that it's only the second time I've done it. Last year around this time, I did actually a series of podcasts that I called like a year in review, because it had been about a year since I'd started doing the podcast. And if you can believe it, now it's been 2 years. I keep forgetting to write down the actual date of the actual first time I put out a podcast, but it was around this time 2 years ago, summer-ish, if you will. So I'm calling this one Year 2 in Review. And the theme, I thought that would be interesting to do it, because I'm planning to do this just more like as one episode, though I have some fun follow-ups that are related that I won't spoil, but I'm excited as well. I want to do this on the theme of like who I have become and who I am becoming. I think it's so interesting to think about, especially this past year, the things that I now own as parts of my identity, things that I call myself now that I would not have called myself a year ago. And so I thought that'd be a fun way to kind of go through what's changed in my life this past year, or a way to sort of more deeply reflect on what this last year means to me. And on top of new identities that I am now holding, I also wanted to sort of deepen and refresh previously held identities, but now they mean something a bit newer and deeper to me. So this podcast is going to have 3 parts to it. I'm going to start with personal life. I'm going to do a bit of clinical life, and then I'm also going to do restorative medical education and coaching life. And I hope that hearing some of the behind the scenes of what I've been going through will be entertaining for you. A lot of what I'm about to say, you have heard me say over the course of the past year. So in some ways, this is a bit of like a summary. And yeah, these episodes are super fun for me to do, even just as a little marker for myself of like, what can change in a year? I think for a lot of us, especially if we're in the midst of feeling really overwhelmed and feeling like we've tried to make some changes and nothing's really sticking, there's a saying that I've heard a ton in the coaching community. I don't know if it's one particular person said it first or if it's just a collective idea, but the notion of we underestimate how long things will take to change in the short term, but nope, I'm saying it backwards. We overestimate how long things will take in the short term. So we like try something once and we immediately give up and think it's worthless and we should just stop, right? But we underestimate how long things can take to change in the long run. So like honestly, give yourself like 3 months and you can make a big shift. Give yourself 6 months and you can like do a lot. Give yourself a year. Like this past year, thinking back on how I felt last year at this time, and I was feeling pretty good, though also a little shaky because if you recall, or if you've sort of been on this journey with me, you'll know last year at this time, I think it had been only a number of weeks, maybe a month tops, that we had learned that my husband's chemo and surgery treatments had been successful and they weren't seeing lymph nodes anymore. And so, like, that was very fresh on my mind, and was really in a place of like deep gratitude about that. But it felt very like fragile at the same time. Everything was really intense. And then I would just say, like, that particular set of events in my life, alongside having this podcast growing, working with more people this way, and having that impact my clinical life, like what has happened in this past year in some ways began with like the seeds that were planted in that first year. But I really feel like things were like popping and blooming this year in wonderful ways. So, starting with personal life, I would say the main shift in my personal life is like me becoming a pleasure activist actively and with intention. That technically started just at the beginning of this year. So, like halfway through this podcast year, if you will, if we're doing June to June are my podcast years. But even in the fall, I was setting the stage for it in that I was making space. I was creating space and capacity in my life, continuing to winnow away things I was doing, making sure I actually had space and time to like be with myself. And then definitely through this past winter, even more intentionally saying, quit this, stop that, do less of this, so that you just have this free space, this blank space on your calendar, and fill it with things that you love. And it's been so fun. I've definitely talked a lot about it on the podcast, but just to reiterate, on top of identifying now as a pleasure activist, I certainly identify as a Swiftie and feel more and more like emboldened to say that every day. In my speaker bio, it still says like at first I said baby Swiftie, but I now would just say like I'm a new but passionate Swiftie. And I think that's true. Like I'm not an original Swiftie. I became a Swiftie in the fall of last year. But I'm like deep in the lore. I recently had I was at this like coaching conference and retreat and got to meet for the first time someone that I do consider like a friend and a colleague, even though, we live far apart and you still only know each other online. And one night she just said, "Okay, Joan, I don't really get the Taylor Swift thing, but like I'm ready." And I was like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yes, tell me everything." And over a glass of wine, I like did a deep dive. I feel like it was actually a pretty solid summary, though it must have taken like a half hour at least. But at the end, she's like, "You know what? I get it." And I was like, "That's right." So I have a whole episode about my obsession with Taylor Swift, so I'm not going to like go into it too much, but I will say it's been so delightful. It's just fun to have something that has so many different pieces to it. It really does remind me of like my old love of Harry Potter, my love of musicals. Like it combines so many things that I already do love, all like the details and the Easter egg, all the songs, all the shows that you can like stream and enjoy. I forget if I've said this on the podcast, but like I recently had a medical student who revealed to me that she also was a fan of Taylor Swift. And it was right before um, Taylor was going back on tour after releasing Tortured Poets Department, which was her latest album she released in April. And I knew that meant probably there was going to be like a new set in the Eras tour show that would be about that album. And sorry if I have told the story before, but it's fine. It's good. This is my podcast. I can say what I want. So I knew, so that was happening like in Paris, right? But I don't know if you guys are aware, but like there are many people who live stream, like people who've paid a bunch of money to be there, but they're so kind to like be on their phones live streaming each Eras concert. And there's places you can go on the internet, on YouTube and like TikTok and stuff, where like someone has like collates these and finds the best streams, so you can like watch. You could be watching every single Eras tour concert if you so had the time and energy and desire to. I don't do that, but especially for these ones since the Tortured Poets, I've at least wanted to peek in and see like what's happening that's new and different. And so it worked out really well where the time that in Paris she was going to be showing like the new set, and I've been kind of like peeking at it on YouTube like all afternoon because we were in clinic together that afternoon. Then we just like saved it, and right at the end of our day after we'd done seeing patients, and partially because like, I'm like, I got all my charts done first. I got a good chunk of my inbox done. And so I said, med student, do you want to watch this with me? And I made sure she consented, because I was like, is she that into Taylor Swift, or is she pretending to like what I like? Because that is a known strategy that I certainly employed when I was a medical student. But she's like, no, I want to watch. Let's do it. And then also one of my colleagues who because her children were really into Taylor Swift when they were teenagers, she also really loves. And so the three of us just went into a clinic room and we watched the Tortured Poet set together. And I have not felt that level of giddiness and delight. Well, I actually do feel that level of giddiness and delight on a regular basis because I'm like actively practicing, but certainly in the clinical setting with colleagues and medical students, the level I still allowed myself to just like jump up and down with glee, like I'm one of my sons being excited about seeing a bug or whatever. Like I just let myself be fully fangirling, and there was something kind of transformative about that experience because, as a professional preceptor, aren't you supposed to like keep it all buttoned up and together? And I was like, no, guys, I'm going to freak out because she's playing so high school. And I'm obsessed with it. It's like, so it's like, I just let myself be totally enthralled and be myself. And that's the kind of thing that being a pleasure activist, whether you're Swiftie or not, I don't think you have to be a Swiftie for all this joy to come into your life, though it's a good one if you're interested. But like, I'm sure there's even other, whether it's a fandom or just like something that you really love, that you want to be obsessed with, that you want to be joyful of, that's just for you, that's not productive, that's not money generating, that's not, good for the world in a traditional way that you can measure the impact, whatever. But this is good for the world because, like, hello, delight and joy. I think we need a bit more of it these days. I don't know if you've noticed that. And sometimes it feels like a distraction, but honestly, I feel like it's been really helpful to sort of just like allow me to ground in myself, in my humanity, in what I love. And I don't think it's been a distraction. I've still very much been doing, and in fact, had more energy and resourcing to do the things that I feel are like my mission to impact others. Still seeing patients, still doing coaching work, still doing creative podcasting, workshopping, like all the other work. And it's fueled by these moments of delight. So that's what being a Swiftie's brought to my life. The other thing, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast or not, but I have purchased a rather money priceful ticket to the Eras Tour in Toronto when they're coming to Toronto in November. I did it. It's a nosebleed ticket. It was the cheapest one they had. And it's, 4 digits. But I'm also already so delighted about that. It gives me kind of like a quote unquote reason or excuse to keep like listening to her music. I don't have to have it all memorized. There's so many songs, but it's sort of fun to be like, how much of her music could I really know deep in my body so that when I go, I'll know those set lists, as well as she has this like surprise song acoustic set where she could literally play any of her music. And like, wouldn't it be fun if I knew the songs? So I'm pumped about that. So that's my like Swiftie identity. And a year ago, Taylor Swift was not really on my radar at all. Like I knew she existed. I had really liked 1989 when it came out, but I wasn't like deep into it at all. And so that is definitely one that's coming in hot and fresh this past year. Out of that, I definitely think some of these other identities. I am now, I would say, a ukulele musician. Before I recorded this episode, I was like, I want to limber up. I want to like ground myself in something I enjoy. So got on my ukulele and played a couple songs off her latest album and sang them. And it just feels so good in my body. And it feels fun to play along at the same time. There's something about that. It makes it even more embodied and more like feels creative and generative. And truly, I only re-picked up the ukulele and the piano to learn Taylor Swift songs. So the dividends, they are paying off in my love for her. I also am a dancer. I took a contemporary dance class over the winter. I learned that It is tricky to take an out of the house class in the evenings when your husband does travel for work sometimes. Also, in the winter, yourself slash your children do get unwell from time to time, and so I've missed a good chunk of the classes, but the ones I did take felt very fun. And beyond that, I just like am a dancer on my own in my house anyway. One of my favorite ways to do quote unquote exercise, like my movement practice, are cardio dance ones. I have several cardio dance, Taylor Swift themed ones, which I know I've talked about before. So just like moving my body, I'm going to identify as a dancer. Okay. Not, novice, not going to be on a stage anytime soon, but it feels so good in my body. And why wouldn't I just claim that identity as one that feels good to me? Because it does. Another thing I am is a singer in a choir. As again, if you've listened to the last few months, you'll have heard that I joined this online choir. And the newest part of that is I'm also a soloist. That's actually what gave me the idea to have this sort of like who I think of myself now versus who I used to think of myself. Because that one, the Swifty one for sure, though I'm very not alone in like newly calling myself a Swifty, but this one feels like a year ago maybe I'd be like, say if someone told me, hey, Joan, a year from now, you're going to like have joined a choir, I'd be like, that's so great. But if a year ago, someone was like, and you're going to sing a solo in a concert with that choir, I would have been like, you've got the wrong number. No, I'm a chorus girl. Like I like singing, I enjoy singing, but I don't have a good voice. I don't have a soloist voice. I'm like, I'm barely an alto. I'm like practically honestly tenor, if you know choir things. Like my voice is deep, if you can't tell. Don't have like a giant range, and so I was like, I can't be a soloist. And yet this 2 days ago from the time I'm recording this, because I'm recording on a Monday, this past Saturday, I went to Toronto. My husband and kids, and also my sister and her wife, got to come watch me. And we were in like the Glenn Gould studio, like a CBC studio. I felt very fancy and official. And I got to sing a solo, and like I was one of the soloists in one of the songs. And the fun thing is, it was me as well as my good friend Sarah, who is a physician as well. Everyone in this choir is a physician, if you don't remember from when I talked about it before. And Sarah's the reason I'm even a part of this choir. So the fact that they invited us to do the solos, like she did the first verse, I did the second verse of Carry On My Wayward Son, if you recall that song by Kansas. And I practiced so much leading up to it. I would sing it multiple times, often doing the dishes slash driving in my car. I had those words down in my mind. And just like the process of prepping for it, the process of feeling the nerves and allowing them to settle in my body. And actually, like some of the my favorite memories of it is the day before the Friday, there was like a dress rehearsal. So that was like the first time we got to sing it, actually a couple of times there. So I got used to like singing on a mic with people watching me, and with the live band, which the live band makes it so much better because you kind of feel like you're part of it. And it's not just like you and everyone's only listening to you. So like that helped. And then even like the mic check before, by the time I actually did it, I was like, I'm a soloist. Like, what do you want me to say? It felt like already part of my identity. And that just feels very fun. Sometimes I know I was thinking back on it actually. I was talking with a friend and she's like, do you think that you never thought of yourself as a soloist? Like, because of like what you thought your vocal ability was? Or do you think that it was actually more like, a lack of confidence or shyness or social awareness? And I think it is that second one. Like, I think looking back, no one ever saw me as a soloist. And also, I never saw myself as a soloist. So then I didn't even check if my vocal abilities could be fine to be a soloist, which, like, by the way, like anyone could be a soloist. They can just be like, you sing and then you sing. And like, whatever your abilities are, you sing it and they're soloists. But like, I would pretend it was because of my range and because of my vocal ability. Like, I actually just did a few minutes ago when I was introducing it, like, oh, my vocal range is too low, as if there aren't full blown musicians who like make a career of being a solo musician with deep voices. Like, it's so funny when you think about it. So I just thought, yes, it's about really confidence, if you will. And the thing about confidence is, if you've never done something before, I think again, I talked last week about watching my son learn to ride a bike, and this past weekend as well, he like fully clicked and started doing it on his own, and his little face just lit up, and he was like teary with excitement that he actually did it. Ugh. And he, again, like there's no reason for him to actually believe he could ever do it because he's never done it before. Same with me and being a soloist. Like in a way, I've never identified as singing a solo, that's for sure. Um, but like you kind of have to pre-believe you can do it. You already kind of have to have in your bones like that it's inevitable, and then you do it. And actually, you just really can. One little nugget about that. So, say you're hearing this, and whether it's that you now do have a goal to become like a vocal soloist or a ukulele musician or a dancer, or even just like something you are like, you know what, I would really love to do this in my workplace. I'd love to be more confident in this setting. I'd like to give a talk. I don't know, like something in your life, you're like, I've always dreamed of doing this, but I felt like I can't because I'm not XYZ enough. The point is, like, whatever you're saying, I'm not, like you could just say I am, and then you embody it, and then it happens, right? And something, a little tip from my concert, Nancy, the lovely Nancy, who is one of the people who arranges the Voices Rock. She does all the admin on the back end, and then she's also like a performer herself. And she was backstage with us before the concert, and she was saying how, listen, you might be feeling nervous, and that's totally understandable. You might have some self doubt. I know I've had self doubt a lot in my career. But the problem is, if you're thinking self doubting thoughts, that will like be portrayed when you're on stage. If you're thinking self doubting, that creates more self doubt, and they can see that self doubt, and then they start doubting you. And so, what can you do instead? She sort of said it like fake it till you make it. And I just loved the phrase. She's like, you just have to remember 3 words: watch me go. I just thought that was so great. I hope I'm remembering that correctly, but that's what I came away with. And so it's like, yeah, watch me go. Like, look at me. Here I go. I'm on stage. I'm singing, and you're welcome. It's sort of having that energy, especially when it's around a performance. That's not like egocentric or something. The whole point of the performance was for people to watch us. And it is enjoyable to watch people who appear to be enjoying themselves, who appear to be proud to be on stage. Like, it's so sad, honestly, that we have these shitty, like shame-filled stories about like being self-deprecating. Because like it's so weird because we think we're doing it so that people won't judge us, but like, and sadly also as we self-deprecate, like, then people are like, oh, they're like, they're not that as excited to interact with us. It's sort of a shoot you in the foot kind of situation, right? So for me, I love the watch me go, and I was definitely thinking that. The other things that I was really thinking about is like, so often when we're in a situation like this, whether it's like a formal performance, but honestly, like every single time you're with a patient, there's a performance element. You're playing a role, right? That's why I have the whole old podcast about performance anxiety, and it being like really just a major way that we end up not showing up the way we want because we're so in our heads about how people perceive us. And so that's the main thing that I really invited myself. I would notice myself being like, what do I do with my hands? What do people think about my dancing? And I would say, okay, but how do I want to move my hands? How do I want to dance? And like refocus back on myself, watch me go as a piece of it, but also like what feels good? What would feel good to do? What feels good in my body right now? What do I love about what's happening right now? So like thinking of myself versus thinking of what other people think of me just allowed me to be myself more. And ironically then allows me to show up in a way that does like also benefit others too. That's definitely true in this singing setting I was in, but also is true clinically. Like thinking of like what feels good to you allows you to be comfortable and confident and hold space for our patients. Like it's all actually quite connected. So there's a little like performance nugget in the middle of this podcast about my identities. My throat is scratchy, probably from all the singing I was doing. So I'm just going to take a sip of water here. So those are some new identities that I've taken on and feel proud to share with you. There's some other personal identities that are not new, but that I definitely did a lot of work on. It makes it sound like it was hard work, but like I did a lot of like thinking. I created space and held space for re-envisioning and deepening what I mean when I say these identities, So one of them is that I am a parent, that I am a mother. I took this whole embodied parenting class this past year, which is honestly like the only class I ever want to take. I don't need another parenting book. I don't need anything. Like, just the notion of this class being like, you're doing your best, period. This job is impossible, period. And a framework that can allow you to feel better about parenting is if you focus on what helps you feel better as you parent. It seems so obvious. It's another form of pleasure activism in a way. So if you're really overwhelmed and stressed, that's when you scream at your kids. That's when all the stuff happens. So noticing my capacity and noticing when I was getting dysregulated and naming it, taking a break. There were times where I'm like, Leo, Felix, whichever one, and be like, I have to take a break. I have to go take a break. And even if they were crying, but if I was then about to scream with them, like saying instead, like, I need to take a break, and like walking away, even just the act of walking away, even if they're following me, and just being like, I'm taking a break, taking a break. And it would help. So then I could like refocus, turn around, and actually have some curiosity and compassion for them. But really like prioritizing that, because if I don't got it, I don't got it to give. Like, it seems so obvious. And yet we think we have to power through. And then that's when we end up really snapping. And so just like, that has been so shifting for me. I definitely still yell. I still get frustrated. Nothing's perfect, because nothing's perfect. Like, what are we even saying? I'm very quote unquote mediocre parent, embracing mediocrity. But I feel good about the brand of mediocrity I've come up with. I really prioritize sharing moments of joy and humor and delight. It's been fun. My older one, Felix, is at an age where he really likes playing games, and we've played some card games. He taught us a card game that he learned at school, and it was like so fun. And I just have to, like, I'll just look at Francis, my husband, and just be like, do you see these kids? I'm just like obsessed with them. They're sweet little faces. They've also, because I've been playing Taylor Swift so much, I showed them bits of the Eras Tour movie, because it's too long to watch the whole thing. But I showed them bits of it, and they really got attached to a few songs. Bad Blood, for one, Antihero, and then also The Man from Lover. And that one in particular, she sings Leo in it. She's like, I just be like Leo in Saint Tropez. And so we sing that one a lot. So, and then whenever we get to that line, we like point at Leo, and then he giggles with delight. And it's just the best, guys. It's just the best. So just, that's like the main thing I want to do is enjoy. When people are like, enjoy every moment. And if you're in that stressy mode that feels actually terrible, and you're like, screw you. And that's valid, because you don't actually have to enjoy every moment. That's a lot. But like, focusing on what I want to do that is enjoyable with my kids, and just like getting to enjoy their childhood, you know? I think I'm going to put in, I have this link to them watching me sing in my choir concert this past weekend. And I made it like an unlisted version of it so I could share it with a couple of people. So if you're on my email list and you're listening to this, go to check your email inbox and see. I'm gonna add it as a link. It's like an unlisted YouTube thing. You get to watch my kids. Try and find me in the crowd, and you'll see both of them like suddenly go and like get really excited. And especially Leo, my younger one, he it takes him a while, but then when he sees me, if you could bottle that up and sell it, you wouldn't need no drugs, that's for sure. So that's just been so fabulous, being a mother and really feeling like I am. This is me being a mom, and feeling less and less judgmental of myself, and that's been the best part. The less and less judgmental of myself, honestly, ironically, helps me show up in a way that's more in line with my values. It's the way it works, folks. I don't know what to tell you. So that's been really fun. And then the other identity is, the identity of, partner, of wife, and that this past year, just with everything that happened with Francis the year before, and we've had two additional clear scans, and there's this thing called scanxiety, that I heard in this like physician Facebook group for like physicians who have family members who have cancer. And people talk about having scan anxiety, and that's definitely been true, where like anxiety about scans, basically like right before you get that same like bizarre sense of like, wow, like depending on what this one scan says, it would absolutely could potentially just completely change your life. And the thing that's fascinating is like, I mean, that could be true of anything. Like I walk out the door, depending on what happens, change my life. Drive to work, depending on what happens, change my life. Like that's actually like any moment could like splinter into multiple realities. But there's something about those ones that it's more obviously how it could be different that makes you realize like what you're not in control of. And then that really makes you think, well, what am I in control of and what do I want to prioritize? And definitely this past year, I feel like it's really grounded our conversations and allowed us to even have like deeper conversations about life, about priorities, and to hold each other with so much more like tenderness. I already loved him a lot before the cancer, but um, ah, I was probably gonna cry at this part, right? Like I'm so appreciative that he's still here, and I love him so much, and it's been so beautiful to watch him, get to know himself better and face things in a different way, whether it's because of the cancer or just like growing up. But like I'm so proud of the work he does for and with and on himself to show up in the way he wants to. And it's very inspiring to me. And then I hear him say that I'm inspiring to him. And that's just like, that's the kind of partnership that I would always wanted to have dream of. And I can't believe that I'm actually in that. And it just feels really good. So yeah, we haven't always, this past year, there's been more traveling and stuff too, interestingly. So we haven't necessarily always had as much like physical time together, though we still have tons. It's just, you know, we're with each other less than when we were trapped in the house during the pandemic. Let's put it that way. But that on its own, actually, I think it helps. Then you have to get intentional about the times you're communicating and intentional about making space for each other. And you also just have that, like, absence makes the heart grow fonder, a bit of space to be your own personal selves as well as being with each other. And that is a healthy dynamic in our relationship for sure. So, yeah, I'm excited for what the future holds, but I'm mostly just grateful. Like, just every whatever Saturday morning eating breakfast is delightful. Like, I feel like we both enjoy similar things and we make sure we prioritize those things in our lives. And it's really special. And I love being married to him. So that is not new, but continues to evolve in ways that I am grateful. I know not everyone is so lucky to have a partner who shows up as you show up. And I can totally see how it's, the notion that you have to be married to one person forever is one of many, many good ways to live a life. And that notion can be a very inhuman story that keeps people with someone that is really not healthy. So I just want to name that, like, I'm grateful that so far this path that is the more traditional path also is working for me. But I think a piece of it is that I know, like, say it wasn't working, say I was growing in a different direction from him or vice versa, I wouldn't be so committed to the project to stay necessarily, like, just because, because it's the just because bit that is really inhuman and can be really harmful for everyone. Um, the last personal life identity I wanted to reiterate is just like my relationship with myself. I'm my own best friend. And I feel that this year, even more than past years, though I felt it happily for the past few years. And I definitely didn't feel that way before. I felt like I was always trying to run away from whatever the voices in my head were telling me, that, the self-critical voices, the ways I'd think I had to beat myself up all the time. I don't feel that it still comes back in spurts and you go, whoops, I'm accidentally, beating myself up again. But like, it's really not my default habit most of the time, or when I'm tired, but like, honestly, otherwise, when I'm like, I'm feeling stressed, then like my default is to be like, okay, Joni, so you're stressed. That sucks. I'm with you. We're together, my relationship with my body and really continuing the sort of embodiment stuff that you've heard me talk about, especially with Jamie Lee Finch on a couple podcasts we've done together and the workshops we do together. Like, the notion of my body and having this real sense of a grounding, soothing, it feels, my body to me feels so, I'm gonna say motherly, like it and feels like it connects me to the earth and to the rest of nature in a way that is sacred and beautiful. And I'm so glad to continue to intentionally connect with that. I actually, for the last several months, have been working with a somatic therapist, like in person in my area, and having that time to really like talk about my body, with the other person's body, has been really impactful and just a really beautiful exploration, and has helped a lot with that. So yeah, I would say just deepening my connection with my body has been a big way that I've been my own best friend. And it's been interesting as I do more of that work. I used to be a really intense journaler and journaled every day, and I still really like journaling, but I've been doing that a little less. But that feels okay, actually. I do still like voice memo myself. I have some voice memos of times I wanted to capture over this past year. Um, but also, as I've become my own best friend, I've also found really good friends. A lot of my really close friends that I've made, especially over the past year and two, have been folks not in my immediate community, but people some very far away in like Hawaii and stuff. And so I've had a lot of voice memo friends. Not a lot. I won't say like so many, but like a core very special number of like voice memo friends that like when I want to talk something out, I don't just want to journal about it. I also have people that I can like verbally process over voice memo and know that they will listen when and if they have capacity, but actually it's more the process of talking to myself, but with this other person there on the other end. It's out of that. That's why I started offering voice memo coaching. So I was like, this is great. It's a way of like self reflection and self journaling. That's also then someone listens and responds back. Are you kidding me? Like, so a bit of being my own best friend has led me to really beautiful, new, deep friendships that I've appreciated so much. So, yeah, those are some of my new and refreshed identities from my personal life. Um, Hello from the future, as in a time when I'm editing the podcast instead of recording it. So if you can't tell, that is the end of part one of my three-part series on year two in review. I had originally made this one giant podcast, but when I finished recording, it was over an hour long and it felt kind of rushed. And there's actually some other bits I might want to add to later episodes, and I don't want to rush it. So that brings us to the close of part one. That's my whole personal life episode. So I hope you enjoyed hearing all of the ways my personal life has changed and grown. Next week, you'll get part two, which will be about my clinical life and practicing family medicine. And then part three will be about my restorative medical education and coaching and podcasts and all that good stuff. And by the way, those are all definitely part of my personal life in that I am me and I am human and my life continues wherever I go. But I know you know what I mean. So thanks so much for listening. And yeah, I will have a little explanation at the beginning of each of these so it makes sense why there's less of like a smooth intro and outro for these weeks because I'm chopping them up. Um, so just to end this one, I want to end it in the way that I end like the last episode that you'll hear in a few weeks. So obviously you just heard me talk a bunch about my life and identities that I was not thinking I would hold a year ago that I really am like deeply holding out. Like, why, yes, I'm a Swiftie. Why, yes, I'm a soloist. I'm a musician. I'm a dancer, like whatever. I'm my own best friend in a deeper way, like all these different things. And so my invitation to you is not only to like listen and, it's interesting to hear about people's lives and how they change, but consider the fact that you, human, healthcare human, have your own life. And what could change in your own life in a year's time? Are there identities you're now holding that you didn't hold a year ago? And are there identities you wish you could hold? Things that, especially in this personal realm, especially that pleasure activism stuff, what would you love to be able to say that you did a year from now? If you were to reflect on this time and really think, gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if a year from now I could say that I'd done this thing? I could say that this was an identity I held. So that's my invitation to you. And if you want to have extra fun, feel free to share that with me. Share, like, reply to an email if you're on my email list, DM me on social media. I love to hear what people have brought into their own lives and what transformation you've brought into your own life in the past year, and what transformations you would love to invite in for the year to come. So let me know, and I'll talk to you next week. I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.